Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, your excellencies and friends of the SCP community. Let us start now, and this is also at the same time broadcasted through the YouTube. Before I start the program, I'd like to first share the screen and present to you that we have our 2015 Asia Pacific Roundtable for SCP this year, scheduled as is, but not in the Cebu, but we do it online. And we do it in 4 consecutive every Tuesday in the form of a webisode. The one we are attending now is the first webisode, and also the opening events. And the second one will be this coming Tuesday, the second webisode in partnership with the Switch Asia SCP, EU Switch Asia SCP facility. And the third webisode will be the next Tuesday after, that's on May 4, if I'm not mistaken, and that will be in partnership with GIZ. And the final one is on May 11, including the closing event in partnership with our colleague in IGES and also the research team of S16. So with that, I now officially, we all start with the webisode 1 and the opening event. So without further ado, may I invite the president of the Asia Pacific Roundtable, Mr. Nowhere Adi Wadoyo from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Indonesia, to give the welcome remarks. Adi.
Yes, good afternoon and good day. Honorable Mr. Fortunato de la Peña, Secretary, Department of Science and Technology, Republic of the Philippines. Honorable Attorney Jonas Leons, Undersecretary of Department of Environmental and Natural Resources, the Republic of the Philippines. Her Excellency, Ms. Laxmi Dewanti, the Vice President to UNEA 5, Director General of Climate Change of the Ministry of Environment and Forestry of Indonesia, and my colleagues, APRSCP Board of Trustees and executives of APRSCP Foundation, and the partners to the APRSCP 15 conference from UNEP. We see Dr. Dechen Sering joining us today. And UNSCAP, we see Dr. Stefanos Vertu joining with us, and also the partners from UNIDO, UNCRT, the One Planet Network, ASEAN, Switch Asia, IGES, GIZ. Distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 15th conference of APRSCP. Firstly, allow me to congratulate and greatly appreciate our host, the Philippines, as the host of the 15th conference of APRSCP, and also to the chair of the conference, Professor Anthony Chiu, and his wonderful team of the La Salle University of the Philippines, and also the continuing support from partners and SCP multi-stakeholders in Asia Pacific region. The Asia Pacific Roundtable on Sustainable Consumption and Production, APRSCP, is a regional convening network that has been providing a sound platform of multi-stakeholder dialogue and partnerships to advance SCP in the region. There have been 14 conferences in the period of 20 years. Now, the Philippines is the host of our 15th conference. APRSCP is going together with SCP development in the region and the international agenda, including in facing the most recent challenge of COVID-19 pandemic worldwide. And so we bring the theme of green recovery and beyond in Asia Pacific through SCP in this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share with you some reflection of progress after the 14th conference of APRSCP. Recalling the 14th conference, Indonesia hosting the conference in Jakarta, November 2018. It was opened by Her Excellency Dr. Siti Nurbaya, the Minister of Environment and Forestry of Indonesia. And we sent the message at the end of the 14th conference, the Asia-Pacific Citizenship Pledge for accelerating implementation of SCP towards prosperity and well-being through enhancing collaboration among community of SCP practice in the region. The spirit from the 14th APRSCP conference was channeled through a side event hosted by Indonesia, Japan, and APRSCP during the high-level political forum of 2019 in New York at the UN headquarters. In UNEA 4 Resolution Number 1, Innovative Pathways to Achieve Sustainable Consumption and Production, where there are paragraphs on formation of community of practice, development of SCP resource pool, enhancing collaboration at national and regional level, and with the One Planet Network, and mainstreaming SCP in national and regional policy and promoting framework of actions. And we see also development of ASEAN framework on SCP with ASEAN, UNEP, and Switch Asia. And starting from today, APRSCP is proudly presenting to you a conference with 4 webisodes. The detailed agenda and registration is provided in our website and Facebook. The 15th APRSCP summary report will include key messages to advancing SCP agenda and roundtable discussion points as inputs to a priority list of items, including youth and technology, for the coming years of APRSCP strategic directions. And we also renew APRSCP. We will revitalize APRSCP organization, including open recruitment of new board members, election of new APRSCP executives by the closing of the 15th conference in May, and establishment of APRSCP Youth Chapter. And APRSCP will continue in promoting multi-stakeholder collaboration in Asia-Pacific region, mainstreaming SCP in regional framework of actions, and advocating SCP movement in Asia-Pacific community of practice. And APRSCP will also strengthening science policy awareness, analysis, studies, recommendations to policy and decision-making, and advocating SCP science policy research agenda in Asia-Pacific region and international arena. And I conclude with my remarks with, again, warm welcome and thanks to all. Enjoy the conference. I thank you. Back to you, Anthony.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so thank you very much, President Adi. We have many innovative ways of doing things to meet the new generation, and we are very excited with your announcement that we are now opening to public for a call for nomination to the board instead of taking the introducing this new path, instead of taking the old path of only nomination through the various institutions. So people are now, they can be nominated individually, directly into the board upon their eligibility. That is a good news. Thank you, Mr. President. At this point, representing the host country, Republic of the Philippines, may I invite the Honorable Secretary of Science and Technology, Mr. Professor Fortunato de la Peña, to deliver the opening remarks. Secretary Boy.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Ah.
Again, my warmest
Okay,
greetings. Allow me to give special greetings to the following. Mr. Noer Adi Wardayo of the Ministry of Environment and Forestry of Indonesia, the President of the Asia Pacific Roundtable for Sustainable Consumption and Production. Attorney Jonas Leones, Undersecretary of our Department of Environment and Natural Resources here in the Philippines. Ms. Laxmi Dewanti, the Vice President of the United Nations Assembly 5 and the immediate past President of the APRSCP. Of course, our very own Dr. Anthony S.F. Chu, University Fellow and Professor at De La Salle University. I would also like to greet Ms. Lorraine Pontefix, a board member of APRSCP, Dr. Estefanos Portiu, the Director for Environment and Development of the UN SCAP, Dr. Rene Van Berkel of the UNIDO, as UNIDO representative and head of regional office in India, Ms. Alessandra Lepore, International Officer of the Green Economy and SCP Desk for Japan, Mr. Arab Hobalia, Team Leader of the EU Switch Asia, Mr. Kai Hoffman, Project Director of the German Agency for International Cooperation, Dr. Katrika Angraini, Project Manager of the Switch Africa, Dr. Natubad Pimpag, Director of the ASEAN Center for Sustainable Development Studies and Dialogue, Dr. Michikazu Kojima, Chief Senior Researcher of the Institute of Developing Economies and JETRO, and Professor Dr. Geng Yong, lead author and Dean of Environment of the Shanghai Jiao Tong University of China, Attorney Kun Zhang, Bhutan National Environment Commission board member of the APRSCP, Dr. Neil Stephen Lopez from De La Salle University and the youth author of the UNEP GE 06. Of course, earlier I saw Dr. Kathleen Abisado, also from La Salle, and the other faculty members who are present here. Of course, I already greeted Dr. Sanjay Kumar earlier, whom I have met before. So there are, from information provided to me, there are 68 countries or member states in the Asia Pacific region that are participating in this APRSCP roundtable. And as probably a good start, I just would like to mention that the Department of Science and Technology in the Philippines, that is the equivalent of the Ministry of Science and Technology in other countries, is the agency of government that is in charge of directing, leading, and coordinating scientific and technological efforts towards the attainment of maximum economic and social benefits for our people. So this covers work involving research and development, technology transfer, productivity through science and technology, human resource development, and of course the different services we offer. We offer a range of services from weather forecasting to volcano monitoring, okay, to the different research and development institutes, and of course the different laboratory and similar technical services that we offer. So we operate 18 institutes or 18 agencies within our Department of Science and Technology. So we are, I think, in a very good position to welcome you in this 15th Asia Pacific Roundtable for Sustainable Consumption and Production under the theme Green Recovery and Beyond in Asia Pacific through SCP or Sustainable Consumption and Production. I guess all of us here and our respective economies use the Sustainable Development Goals as a guide in our science and technology and innovation initiatives. Whether we are talking of the food sector, the textile sector, the metal sector, the packaging sector, water, energy, and all of this. This will require what we call sustainable consumption and production. And if you will look at the other sustainable development goals, and by the way, I have gotten into the habit of carrying a small pamphlet in my pocket every day that reminds me of the 17 sustainable development goals. Okay, so it's a small pamphlet that contains all the 17 SDGs. And if we look at the different SDGs, it is not only SDG 12 that is, shall we say, related to our round table. We also have the other SDGs where we have to produce and consume, okay, that are related, whether we are talking of SDG 2, which is, of course, zero hunger, or SDG 6, which is the sustainable management of water, or SDG 7, that has something to do with the sustainable consumption and production of energy, or even Goal 11, which is to sustain or to have sustainable cities, or even Goal 14 and 15, which deals with the sustainable use of resources that we find in our oceans, seas, and marine resources, and as well as those that are found in the terrestrial ecosystem. Of course, Sustainable Goal 17 is, I think, very visible in what we are doing today, which is strengthen global partnerships for sustainable development. So this event, which we are opening now, is actually a testament to the APRSCP's continuous provision of a sound platform for multi-stakeholder dialogue and partnerships to advance sustainable consumption and production in the region. If I may just cite some statistics that has been given to me, according to the Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF Philippines, it is estimated that in 2019, Filipinos wasted 308,000 tons of rice. Well, that is an annual figure. And in Metro Manila alone, 2,175 tons of food end up in trash bins only. And this is mainly because of the traditional consumption and production processes which have already been established in our economy. So to help lessen these numbers, the Philippines has initiatives, okay, that would push sustainable consumption and production. Dr. Chu mentioned earlier about our Future Earth Philippines program implemented by our National Research Council of the Philippines, and also partnered with the National Academy of Science and Technology. It aims to improve our country's capability to achieve our SDGs through Philippine Knowledge Action Programs for Sustainability. If I may cite some initiatives that we have at the Department of Science and Technology, then you can see how extensive sustainable consumption and production is as far as sectors are concerned. We have actually, together with what I mentioned about Future Earth Philippines, we have recently started a smart food value chain program, okay, that actually starts with the production among our farmers and ends up at the consumption in our tables, okay. So this smart food value chain program that we have also wishes to reduce, okay, wastage, and to see to it that everything will be just in time, okay, because when you have supply and demand is not there, okay, it will lead to wastage, okay. And if you have supply and there is no processing facility, it also leads to wastage. And up to the end level, which is, of course, consumption at our tables. We have also put up and about to inaugurate what we call a smart green packaging, not smart, it's a green packaging laboratory under our packaging development, research and development center. And this one, of course, seeks to reduce our waste that are non-biodegradable. And of course, green packaging is part of promoting sustainable consumption and production. Recently, we have inaugurated and started operating what we call a modular multi-industry innovation center. It is actually an innovation hub where our small enterprises can come, okay, or even the medium-sized enterprises can come and see how they process raw material coming from farm produce. Okay, and what impresses me is the fact that some of the what we call wastages that we used to have, for example, if you process calamansi juice, or if you process mango puree, okay, you are left with the wastages like the mango peelings or the calamansi leftovers, okay, and but then I saw that they were processing those raw materials into something useful. Okay, they're coming with tablets that are actually what we call fiber supplements, dietary fiber supplements. So you can still come up with good products, and that is to me sustainable production and consumption. We have recently, okay, started, and if it were not for the lockdowns that we have been experiencing, we should have inaugurated last April 12 our advanced additive manufacturing center, or advanced manufacturing center, which basically features additive manufacturing processes. As we know, even in the processing of materials, take the case of metals, we are used to the processes where we start with a bulk, with a piece of raw material like metal, and we start the processes that cut, that shall we say, put on, you drill them for holes, you let them through other processes to reduce size and to come up with the needed shapes. And that is actually the opposite of additive manufacturing. So in additive manufacturing, we build up, okay, the product, okay, by adding material in the process, and very, very minimal or practically no wastage in terms of raw material. Even in our Textile Research Institute, they have come up with projects like their textile upcycling and reuse, okay, and also their project on which they call closing the loop on fashion, okay. So these are all examples of our initiatives regarding sustainable consumption and production, and even in the use of housing raw materials, particularly forest products that we use for housing. We also have this program. So our initiatives actually cover many sectors, and we really envision that the sustainable consumption and production initiatives, coupled with the initiatives of the 68 member states in Asia, and the outcome of today's roundtable discussion, will contribute towards green recovery of the Asia Pacific region. As I said, goal SDG, goal number 7 is to strengthen global partnerships. And this roundtable is, shall we say, a concrete manifestation of working on that SDG number 17. So we at the Department of Science and Technology of the Philippines are looking forward to collaborating with all of you. Maraming salamat at magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Maraming salamat, Secretary De La Peña. Thank you very much. May I invite you to stay for a while? We will have a group photograph with all the speakers who are now in the Zoom room. May I request Dr. K. Aviso to please put it back to the gallery view, okay, so that we can have a group photograph. May I invite everyone to please yeah, to please take a photo, a group photo. So Enzo and Miss Pat, have you?
All right. Can we have some smiles from everyone, please?
Okay.
Let's take 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Hold your smiles for the
Yeah,
next page.
yeah, just a moment. Sena, Tani, you are still not, we cannot see you.
Okay.
Yeah, and Kuntani,
Yes.
your webcam. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Let's have another picture.
Yeah.
Let's hold your smiles for another 3 seconds, please. 1, 2, 3. And for the next page, let's go. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, may I invite our Honorable Undersecretary of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, which is the equivalence, the Vice Minister of Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, Yusek Jonas, to give a short opening remarks on behalf of our Philippines, our being the host country.
Thank you, Prof. Chu. A pleasant good afternoon to all. As countries all over the world continue to make fundamental changes in the way societies produce and consume goods and services, we are once again given a bigger challenge to find ways and make significant contribution towards green recovery post the COVID-19 pandemic. For 15 years, this gathering of multi-stakeholders continues to engage, develop, and implement innovative policy solutions towards the implementation of programs on sustainable consumption and production, or SCP. Guided by the 10-year framework of programs on SCP, we have reached significant progress over the years, but more needs to be done as we reevaluate our strategies amidst these uncertain times. All of us here agree that this pandemic has caused serious disruptions in the global supply chain and manufacturing network, but the situation, no matter how serious, still remains hopeful. Currently, most of the manufacturing and supply chain organizations are looking for sustainable options to anticipate the negative impacts of COVID-19. The pandemic opened a window for sustainable business transition and the needs to make supply and production systems more resilient. Now more than ever, SCP remains a very important aspect in the decision-making process of business organization and industry managers. As we continue to mainstream SCP in the design and implementation on a range of economic, development, and sectoral policies, this will allow us to identify areas of cooperation and synergies that will ensure a wider collective impact on our various programs. The life cycle approach, which we have identified as one of the criteria for the 10 YFP programs, proves to be an important approach in identifying pollution and resource use hotspots and in developing efficient policy packages to change patterns of consumption and production. The COVID-19 pandemic has aggravated an existing waste management problem, and that is the disposal of trillions of discarded face masks and other personal protective equipment. This pandemic has allowed us to seriously look into the way we manage our waste and what recycling is. The volumes of waste that we have to deal with long after the pandemic is gone but must be seriously tackled. Now is the time for more decisive actions and collaborations to ensure a sustainable future. The Philippines once again reiterates its deep commitment to move towards a sustainable pattern of consumption and production. We support the continued development of efficient structures and individual actions that minimize the use of natural resources and the generation of waste and pollution, which are all geared towards a better quality of life for all. We welcome collaboration with the various SCP partners and member states in this global consultation process as we improve resource efficiency and build capacities to facilitate the shift to SCP. With the challenges of this pandemic comes remarkable stories of success on resilience and cooperation. Let us continue to showcase these initiatives as a source of inspiration to continue achieving the triple win solutions for our people and our planet. I wish for the success of these various webisodes as we adapt to the challenges of this new normal. May this undertaking strengthen our partnership as we move forward and emerge stronger than ever towards our country's healing and our planet's survival. Thank you at mabuhay tayong lahat.
Maraming salamat, Yusek Jonas. Thank you very much, Yusek. We have the two most important ministries or departments of our country working hand in hand on both the SDG issues. I want again to emphasize that under the DOST, we have one of the earliest cleaner production technology centers set up under DOST and working on various, I would say, production process improvement programs. And then now Secretary Boy explained that there are further technology working on closing the loop. While from our country, we just also through DNR and the interagency, we also declare our nationally determined contribution for the climate change carbon emission target of 75%. So we are very excited to see how the Asia Pacific member economies would be working together under the leadership of the current various governments. Thank you very much. Without further ado, I would like to invite one of our board members from Pakistan, Madam Ambreen Wahid. Can you please introduce our keynote speaker? Ambreen? Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody from wherever you are. So I have the pleasure of introducing Ms. Lakshmi Dhawanti as immediate past president and a good host because I was remembering our last conference in Indonesia, where of course we all physically met, and I'm missing meeting all the board members and Rene, Arab, and Stefan and all others. So coming back to Lakshmi, Lakshmi has been associated with Asia Pacific Roundtable for Consumption and Production, our board for more than a decade, actually almost 2 decades. Lakshmi is a die-hard environmentalist. She has been involved in policy development with the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, and she has implemented various economic instruments for environment protection, management, environment finance, financial incentive schemes, natural resources, and also international trade-related affairs. She has handled and she represented Asia region as a member of CDM, also expoed on UNFCCC and Global Environment Facility Operation Focal Point for Indonesia, and she is the president of 5th session of UN Environment Assembly, and she holds a degree from the University of Sussex in Environment and Policy, and a wonderful person. So Lakshmi, please, if I've left anything, because she has done so much that I can't introduce her in 1 minute or two. So please carry on, and you can add whatever I have, if I've missed something important. Welcome, Lakshmi.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Lakshmi, you can share your document also.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambreen, for very kind introductions. Good afternoon, everybody, and well, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. I wish you all the best, and I'm glad to be here meeting you all guys, although it's a virtual, but it is our new normal. So, but still happy to meet you. Honorable Mr. Fortunato de la Pena, Secretary, Department Science and Technology, the Philippines. Honorable Attorney Jonas Leones, Undersecretary, Department and Environment and Natural Resources of the Philippines. Mr. Adi Nur Adi Wardoyo, President of the APRSCP. My dear colleagues, all the APRSCP Board of Trustees, and the executive of the APRSCP foundations. Ladies and gentlemen, all participants. Again, I would like to extend a welcome to the 15th conference of the APRSCP. I'm joining Mr. Adi to appreciate Anthony's team, the Philippines, for hosting this excellent virtual 15th conference of APRSCP. Indeed, it's a history because it is the first time for APRSCP having this virtual conference. Yeah, colleagues, partners of SCP families, again, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. Having my 10 or 15 minutes, let me share some thought on these very important occasions. And Anthony, allow me to share screen. It will help me to convey my points.
Yes, you may share your screen.
Yes. Can you see my screen now? Yeah.
Yes, we can see.
Yes, we are talking, the theme of this roundtable is Green Recovery and Beyond in Asia Pacific through SCP. And I put double SCP in my title because it's very important. SCP, it's the only way moving forward together for the future we want. Of course, we would like to have a very wonderful future. So I believe that SCP is a very great platform and vehicles to arrive to that directions. Let me start with share these pictures. This is the planet boundaries. Colleagues, you all aware that the changings of ecosystems, the change to ecosystems to our planet due to human activities were more rapid in the past, say, 50 years than at any time in human history. So increasing the risk of abrupt and irreversible change to our planet, to our ecosystems. I believe we all aware that the main drivers of change are the demand of food, water, and leading to change in ecosystem services. These drivers are either steady, showing no evidence of declining over time, or are increasing in intensities. And unfortunately, the current high rates of ecosystem damage and extinctions can slow by effort to protect the integrity of living systems, enhancing habitat and improving connectivity between ecosystems while maintaining resources for human needs. There is a long history in making the effort toward sustainable development. If I would like to start back in 1972, and next year we're gonna to celebrate the Stockholm conference. So we've been in a very long journey, many commitments, many consensus, stronger or recommitted of the commitment has been there. In 2012, the Rio Plus 20, we all agree to have the future we want. And for sustainable consumption productions, the future we want, it's kind of the recommitted to stronger the commitment that has been there since 20 years ago. Because in the Rio conference, one of the important agenda resulted from the Rio conference was to change unsustainable consumption and production pattern. Yet this agenda has been maybe under a shadow of our agenda, namely climate change, biodiversity, combating the desertifications. So for me, 2012, the document of future we want is the new momentum for the SCP. I would like to take two important elements of the documents, the future we want. Of course, in Para 226, we all know that there's a mandate to develop the 10-year framework of SCP to accelerate the shift toward sustainable consumption production pattern with adoption of the 10-year framework of program. So I believe that we are now in the very timely positions to look and to evaluate where we are now compared to the previous or compared to the document that we are having before. The second element of the future we want that I would like to emphasize is the green economy. Because of the theme of this APRSCP, it's a green recovery. And in many documents, including the discussions of the implementation of the Sendai framework in addressing the the pandemic of COVID-19 that we are having now. So green economy is a very in the context of sustainable development and in the same time to alleviate the poverty. This future we want acknowledge the green economy as one of the important tools available for achieving the sustainable development, and that it could provide options of policy making, but should not be a rigid set of rules. This kind of approach is exactly the approach of the SCP that we would like to have. Maybe we already have that kind of approach, but using this occasion, the 15 roundtables, I need and I encourage everybody of us to re-engage with that issue, to recommit to the commitment that we are having before. And the green economy, it should be contribute to eradicating poverty, as well as sustain economic growth, enhancing social inclusion, improving human welfare, and creating opportunities for employment, or we call it green jobs or decent jobs for all, while maintaining the healthy functions of the Earth ecosystems. This is exactly what sustainable consumption and productions meant for. Because the one of the key word of the green economic is both are internalize the externalities and making the utilizations or resources more efficient. So I think we still valid to use the spirit of the future we want documents to re-emphasize our work, to strengthen our commitment, and to accelerate our effort towards the future we want through the SCP. I just would like to share the next 3 slides just to show you. I took this slide from Mr. Adi, showing that how strong the consensus are in dealing with the current challenges, the climate change, the loss of biodiversity, and many other challenges that we are having. And in those discussion, sustainable pattern consumption and production is always been mentioned as solution, as a tools to contribute and to address the challenges. So I believe that we are all having a very strong support from the community to move forward. This is the economic sector and the three crises that we are having now, and it's very much the area or the coverage of the implementation of sustainable consumption and production before the pandemic, and moreover after the pandemic of this COVID-19. So many multilateral environmental agreements include the sustainable consumption related points in their convention. So I just would like to underline that internalize the SCP, mainstreaming the SCP, integrate the SCP to all the conversation and discussion of multilateral environmental agreements is a must. We've been doing that. We've been doing that kind of effort actually, but we still need to do it, especially when those multilateral environmental agreements trying to shift their paradigm, trying to shift their roadmap, trying to change their instruments and approach in dealing with the current situations of the pandemic COVID-19. As has been mentioned, currently I'm one of the vice presidents for the UNEA 5. UNEA has been very much support the agenda of SCP. Back in the second session of UNEA, we have resolutions on sustainable consumption and productions. This resolution well recognized that promoting SCP is essential for achieving sustainable development and notes that all countries should take actions. So after years of the Future We Want launch, we re-emphasize our commitment by having these resolutions. And again, in the fourth sessions of the UNEA, there's another a strong resolution on the SCP, and it's more detailed and more sophisticated and innovative. It is about innovative solution for environmental challenges and sustainable consumption and productions. This resolution actually quite a strong resolution, and it's request the United Nations environmental programs to support this agenda even stronger than before. These slides just show us the milestone of international development cooperations and green issues. The pattern of international development cooperations and the discussion of green issue, it's always back to back discussions. So now we are talking the green recovery in this roundtable, and we back several years ago in 2015, there is an agenda of Addis Ababa Action Agenda, Paris Agreement, and Sendai Framework. Sendai Framework is specifically dealing with the disaster and how to recover from the disasters. So if we already, as I mentioned before, we need to integrate, we need to mainstream, we need to internalize the SCP into the various multilateral environmental agreements. Now it is a time to also integrate the SCP concept into the implementation of the Sendai framework, which is very fit with the current effort that we would like to have for moving toward to have the green recovery in this region. This region, why this region is very, very important, and why the team has been selected by the APRSCP. If I may use this sentence, because this sentence has been well, it's I took this sentence from the concept note of this 15 roundtable. You know, in Asia and in the Pacific, there was an emerge of a strong national and regional approach for cooperation of sustainable consumption implementations. Again, it's a basic and it's a model for restarting our effort. And there has been significant progress in promoting, implementing SCP in the regions. And again, and also it's important to build on what has been done in this region through various initiatives, and as well as to provide a platform for a dialogue and how to build and strengthen partnership to move forward together and emerge stronger towards green recovery post-COVID-19 pandemic. So for me, it is very time. It is a time to walk the talk, and it is a time to mobilize the resources. It's a complicated diagram that I'm putting here. I just would like to show us that there are a lot of resources, and we need to mobilize resources. So to be able to mobilize resources, we need to know for sure where to start and which ecosystem of the source of resources that we would like to intervene. For me, these pictures has been inspired, especially myself, in developing various economic instruments in Indonesia. I believe that there is an incentive set by the state. There is a market that have their own strength and plenty of options, and we need something to governance. A good governance is important. So at least three ecosystems. These ecosystems, the incentive by the state, the creation of market, and the administrative or governance of the resources, it's need to be dealt with. I just would like to share some thoughts while talking about mobilizing resources, which is very important for us to move toward the green recovery post-COVID-19 pandemics. For me, there is needs to scaling up support for SCP actions. Indeed, we know that the SCP actions need a strategic policy and financing collaborations among stakeholders. And this roundtable, it's need to contribute to this effort in making a strategic policy and financing collaborations happen at the globals, at the national, and local. So when talking about SCP as part of the sustainable development concept, we have a lot of stakeholders, and all the stakeholders need to be involved. As we know that one of the 2030 agenda of sustainable development goals, one of the jargon is no one left behind. So make sure that in developing a strategic policy and financing collaboration for SCP actions, we need to have every single stakeholders to be on board. For me, there are 4 strategies that we may start with. We need to have a continued effort in greening the fiscal policy. We need to make the SCP action more attractive to private sector investment. We need to develop and to integrate the SCP flavor into the more innovative financing instrument that has been developed since in recent years. And we need to make sure that we need to improve access to the global finance. So these are 4 strategies that I would like to share. To end my speech, I just would like to say that unlocking support for SCP actions and sustainable development is a challenge of our times, and that we must address head on. And we need to raise our voice from Asia and the Pacific as a commitment. Collaborative and innovative policy actions are also important elements to meet the needs of the SCP actions by all, especially for building back better in the context of this COVID-19 pandemics. So I'm looking forward to receiving insight, suggestions, innovative solutions, recommendations from this 15th conference of APRSCP to the various relevant international, the One Planet Network, the next coming UNEA 5.2, the high-level panels, and other relevant international fora. So wish you all the best. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy. And I believe sustainable consumption and productions will be the answer for everybody of us to safely arrive at the future we want. Thank you, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Back to you, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Lakshmi. Yes, we are working very hard, and of course, with the new elected board in May and June period, we will be very much interested to work again with several governments in our Asia Pacific economies to host another side events in the forthcoming July high-level political forum, including the output of these 4 webisodes. Thank you very much for your advice. May I please allow me to move on to invite the next speaker to do the presentations. Our first presentation will be officially introduced by our board member Sanjay Kumar, but unfortunately, I think he encountered some technical issues. May I ask if Sanjay, can you just do the audio without the webcam? Is it working with you?
The webcam is not working.
Yeah, I think the audio will be very effective already in introducing our speaker of the next presentation.
Yeah. So thank you, Anthony. Dr. Stefanos Foto is the Director of Environment and Development Division in the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. Dr. Stefanos is responsible for planning and implementation of the UN SDG work on natural resource management, climate change, sustainable urban development, green economy, as well as for the other coordination and review of 2030 agenda and the SDGs. Some of the important highlight of his work in his current position includes successfully leading intergovernmental negotiation resulting in specific normative outcomes, establishing new initiative on technical cooperation and capacity development, as well as ideating and steering analytical works in the substantial area of his responsibility. Prior to assuming this responsibility, Dr. Stefanos has held several important positions in the United Nations and is well-known face in the Asia Pacific in the field of sustainable consumption and productions. He holds a PhD in natural resource economics, a Master of Science in Information System, and a Master of Science in Forestry and Nature Environment. Dr. Stefanos, the floor is yours. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Stefanos. Would you like me to play the video, or would you like to use? Okay. So we are very grateful for Dr. Stefanos, who is an economist and an SNT person who can understand all the interfaces. May I now take the privilege to share my screen and play the video of his file.
Dear participants of the 15th Asia Pacific Roundtable on Sustainable Consumption and Production, greetings from Bangkok. I'm Stefanos Fotiou, the Director of Environment and Development Division in the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, and it's my great pleasure to address the opening session of this APRSCP. I've been in many APRSCPs. It's my first virtual one. As I understand, it's the first virtual one for many of us. What I would like to do in the next 7 to 8 minutes is to share some thoughts with you on how we can deliver an environment and climate responsive recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, and what are some lessons we have learned so far, and some entry points related to sustainable consumption and production that we can use for this kind of recovery. Let me start by saying that the COVID-19 pandemic, it's another impact of unsustainable human activity. 19 disease, it's a manifestation using unnatural resources. It's a manifestation of the unsustainable urbanization, the unsustainable land use change, the way extractive industries are working, the way we grow, trade, and consume our food, and the way we cover our energy needs. As you can see in this graph, environmental causes are primary drivers of past disease emergence. Causes like land use change, like food, like agriculture industry. The COVID-19 pandemic is not the only one, but it's a zoonotic pandemic. It's a zoonotic disease, a disease that escaped from the wild animals, from the natural environment, and went to the human population. We have other cases like the HIV, for example. And the more we disrupt the links between human development and natural environment, the more we will be facing these pandemics. So we have seen so far that the COVID-19 had an impact on the environment. In the first days, in the first weeks of the COVID-19, there was even some news that they were saying, you know, we have a slowdown of activities, CO2 emissions are coming down, air pollution is decreasing, we have a lot of urban cases. And in the beginning, there were even some pictures that they were saying that the environment is becoming better. But it's not the case. The COVID-19 has also a very big impact on the environment. We might have seen a temporary reduction in CO2 emissions, but that was temporary. And if you see what happened last December, when the lockdowns have stopped in many places in the world, is that we had again an increase. Also, we had a big increase on plastic pollution. And maybe we had some months for low air pollution, but there's a V-shaped return to the negative impact. Only Thailand, last April, there was a more than 50% increase of plastic pollution. And in cases like cities in India, in Mumbai, we saw more than 60% of the cases being in slums, in conditions that people cannot afford to have water. And look what was the story about the air pollution. Yes, there was some reduction because of the lockdowns, but the return is a V-shaped. So I think we can learn some sustainability lessons from the COVID-19. One is to put science and scientists first. Second is to adopt a whatever money take approach. We saw that governments put a lot of money on the recovery, and that was the correct thing to do. We need also to protect and improve common goods, to focus on the one left behind, to make global value chains climate resilient, to fix our food systems because they're extremely important, and also ensure that all the debate is happening on the basis of scientific information and not on fake news. So in the UN, we do have explicitly said that the UN framework for the immediate socioeconomic response to COVID-19 needs and is focusing also on the environment. And we need to identify first what are the barriers to the sustainable management of natural resources and why this sustainable development hasn't happened. And I want to highlight 4 of them. The one is that we never use the carrying capacity of ecosystems as part of the development planning. We have consumption and production models that they are very based on weak standards. The finance system is promoting the brown economy, and we have also the wrong subsidies and incentives. More than $500 billion of wrong subsidies that cause pollution. So we have some frameworks that we can use to build back better. Green growth is one of them, and I think all of you are familiar with green growth. There's another framework which is relatively new, the framework of planetary health, that looked at the health of human civilization and the state of the natural environment. And it's an approach that wants to reestablish a symbiotic relation between humans and ecosystems. So we can use some frameworks, but these frameworks, they need some specific entry points. And I think that sustainable consumption production would give us specific entry points. Entry points like something saying that the stimulus packages should take natural resources use and management into account. And this is directly in relation with the SDG target 12.2. We talked about the sustainable management of natural resources. Also, recovery plans should at least maintain, if not strengthen, the existing environmental standards and policies. What SDG 12.8A is asking. Also, corporations should use strict environmental standards, and the finance sector needs to divest from harmful practices, as SDG 12.6 is asking. And last but not least, we need to stop fossil fuel subsidies and apply the polluters pay principle, as the SDG target 12.c is asking. So we have entry points, and one very important key is the global financial system that needs to decarbonize portfolios, estimate of climate risk in all insured products, and make regulatory frameworks in investments on key sectors like construction and transport to be climate and environment responsible. There's a big opportunity there because there are more than $250 trillion that they are managed by the global financial system, and this is managed by private corporations. In ASCAP, we try to create an environment that will find the sweet spot on COVID-19 response, the needs of poor people in ASCAP countries to be covered, and also for a climate and environment responsibly recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Let me close by saying that the only way that we can address the climate and biodiversity emergencies, that they are the main impacts of the unsustainable consumption and production, is to reestablish the relation between nature and human activity and redesign our financial system. If we do this, and if we do this on the basis of specific entry points on sustainable consumption and production, we can have a better future. We can have hopes that we will not see pandemics like the one. I thank you very much, and I wish you best of luck in your deliberations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Fortu, for injecting many new dimensions that we, on top of the many issues that we have been talking about SCP, and bring us to many out-of-the-box dimensions to consider, especially later in the roundtable discussion. Thank you. So now may I invite one of our Filipino expert in sustainable consumption, Dr. Jonah, to introduce the next speaker, the UN Environment Roll-Up Director, Dr. Cherry. Dr. Jonah.
Good day, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Dashan Cherry, who is the Regional Director of UN Environment Program in Asia and the Pacific. As a regional arm of UNEP, the Asia Pacific Office works with governments, local authorities, and the private sector to develop and put into place cleaner and safer policies and strategies that encourage the efficient use of natural resources and reduce risk for humans and the environment. She has been actively involved in intergovernmental negotiations as a key negotiator for least developed countries and contributed to the establishment of the Least Developed Countries Fund and the Least Developed Countries Expert Group. She comes to UNEP from the UN Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Secretariat, where she served as Director of the Finance, Technology, and Capacity Building Program. Dr. Charing holds a PhD in Forest Economics and Policy from the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. She also has a master's degree from Georgetown University and undergraduate degrees from the University of California, Berkeley. Let us all warmly welcome Dr. Dashan Cherry.
Mr. Noor Adi Wadoyo, Ministry of Environment Forestry Indonesia, President of the Asia Pacific Roundtable on SAP, Mr. Fortunato de la Pena, Secretary, Department of Science and Technology, Republic of the Philippines, Honorable Ati Jonas Leonis, Undersecretary, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Her Excellency Ms. Laxmi Dewanti, Vice President, 5th Session of the UN Environment Assembly, Mr. Anthony Chu, Roundtable Webisode 1, my colleagues Stefanos, Renee, Arab, and Kai. Excellencies, delegates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon. COVID-19 has brought us even closer to our lives, the triple planetary crises, climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution we're witnessing. Climate change is a zoonotic disease transmitted from animals to humans. We're worsening the risks of pandemics by cutting into nature, but this is not the only impact. Loss of biodiversity and ecosystem integrity undermines efforts on 80% of assessed SDG targets. This means slower progress on poverty, hunger, health, water, and climate. The SDG progress report for 2020 prepared by the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia Pacific highlights that this region is not on track to achieve any of the 17 SDGs by 2030. In its current trajectory, the region may achieve less than 10% of the SDG targets. So there is an added urgency to ensure that responses to the pandemic in this region and at the national level accelerate progress towards a 2030 agenda. Stimulus funding by governments in this region must be channeled to sustainable and green recovery. We must build more and greener public transport, fund renewables and energy efficient retrofitting. We must not bail out private companies without a climate plan, and we must stop the subsidies to coal. If we look at current projections and you look at energy demand, we know that it will increase by 50 to 60% between now and 2050. Yet, the amount of fossil fuels in that mix must decrease by 80% by 2050 if we are to meet the Paris Agreement targets. Significant environmental and health synergies exist in the shift away from fossil fuels, with decreases in outdoor air pollution leading to decrease in premature deaths. Countries from the Asia Pacific region have submitted their nationally determined contributions, but only around 17% of the NDCs include nature-based solutions set, quantifiable and robust targets. We have to build an economic system that values nature as a central source of human well-being, environmental health, and economic prosperity in the post-COVID-19 world, and nature-based solutions can form an important part of this opportunity to shift toward a sustainable and resilient future. We are going to need more ambitious, nationally determined contributions. As we've seen from the emissions gap report, the current NDCs are not enough to keep us within 2 degrees of warming, let alone 1.5 degrees. On pollution, we know it is possible to build on some bright spots, and the countries of the Acid Deposition Monitoring Network in East Asia, or ENET, decided recently to bring air quality and air pollution issues into their scope of work. During the first International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies in September last year, discussions indicated that there was interest to establish a regional mechanism on air quality. Let us take that up with vigor. We can also build on a biodiversity bright spot. The UN Biodiversity Summit held at the conclusion of the General Assembly in 2020 proved to be a remarkable moment for nature. More than 100 heads of state and government identified biodiversity conservation and financing as vital to the planet's interests. Let's translate this momentum into a stronger post-2020 biodiversity framework. We urgently need to raise our ambition in the vital months leading to the 15th Conference of Parties in October in Kunming, China. I'm happy to note the extent of efforts made by countries in our region to combat plastic pollution and marine litter, which was highlighted at the Sea of Solutions event in November 2020, including through the Regional Seas Conventions and Action Plan. Even before COVID-19, this region's attention was focused on alarming amounts of plastic waste and the intensity of impacts. The scale of these challenges are large. For example, we expect the generation of waste will continue to increase to 2050, given population growth and economic development scenarios. Yet, we need to reach a near zero waste society by 2050 if we are to achieve a healthy planet with healthy people. Significant social and economic benefits will likely result from policies such as circular economy and the reduce, reuse, recycle approaches. And when we start to look at green recovery by accelerating progress on the SDGs, unsustainable consumption and production patterns, you start to look at the world's natural resources that have been depleted and deteriorated. These challenges, if not addressed properly, can pose significant detrimental effects on the efforts to achieve the 2030 Development Agenda. We're already experiencing regression of SDG 12's responsible consumption and production due to various reasons, including unsustainable consumption and production practices. So if you look at the progress report of the SDGs by UNESCAP, the following are important areas for accelerating progress towards SDG 12 while boosting progress to achieve other SDGs. Firstly, green recovery must be based on comprehensive and well-analyzed data, as there is lack of data and in-depth analysis for science policy business interface. We need systematic and periodic data collection at national and local level to be institutionalized and to be the basis to design policies, business models, financing mechanisms, and behavioral change. Secondly, there is a wealth of knowledge in this region, and regional institutions, as well as multilateral bilateral programs that are playing an important role for promoting and assisting stakeholders on sustainable consumption and production. Thirdly, there have been various multilateral and bilateral programs, such as the EU-funded Switch Asia for mainstreaming sustainable consumption production, the German-funded Go for SDGs, which will be launched shortly, supporting SDG 12, the Japan-supported Marine Pollution Abatement Program, the Republic of Korea's work on supporting sustainable green public procurement, and China supporting green consumption, a few examples which build the momentum for SDG 12. Fourthly, we need to focus on sustainable lifestyle approaches. It's a prerequisite to achieve the SDGs in the Paris Agreement. The targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and carbon footprint per capita rely on a change in lifestyle supported by green products and services. Fifthly, the Global Environmental Outlook 6 clearly shows that transformative policy pathways are needed to achieve this change. Incremental policies will not be sufficient. Stimulating social and technological innovations will help create these transformative pathways. If you look at electrification of the vehicle fleet, encouraging meat-like diets, policies that support sustainable public procurement. Public sector spendings range from 30 to 50% of the GDP in many developing countries. Therefore, sustainable public procurement could provide the basis for new models of investments, and businesses in some countries in the region are already actively implementing it. Last but not least, sustainable finance is key. Sustainable development represents a $1 trillion opportunity for businesses. For companies that are able to bring value to people and the environment, Asia represents $5 trillion business opportunity and could potentially generate 230 million new jobs in Asia by 2030. So in conclusion, I invite all countries in the Asia and the Pacific to bring ambition and aspiration to the fourth session of the Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific, scheduled to be held in 2021, which will lead into the regional preparatory process for the fifth session of the UN Environment Assembly. Our environmental challenges have been magnified by the pandemic, but as ever, I remain optimistic. We've seen resilience, innovation, and ambition in the face of an extremely difficult past year. Let us turn that determination to our environmental challenges this year. I thank you and wish you very successful deliberations.
Thank you very much, Director Sharing, especially that you mentioned and highlighted the well-being, the social dimension in the triple bottom line among the sustainable development. So may I now invite the past president of the Asia Pacific Roundtable, Sena Peris, the former director of NCPC Sri Lanka, to introduce our next speaker. Sena, are you?
Sorry, I have a bit unstable connection, Anthony. So I think it will be better if you can make the introduction.
Okay. All right. So I may now take the privilege to introduce our next speaker on behalf of Sena. Our next speaker is a very, very close friend of the APRCP. He has been attending the APRCP back in the early days. I will not mention the years when he was still with the academe. And he's now the UNIDO representative and heads the regional office in India. Dr. Rene van Verkel, who also heads the Recipe Net for several years when he was with the UNIDO headquarters in Vienna, also leads many of the initiative and works in partnership with APRCP. So UNIDO works to foster inclusive and sustainable industrialization in its member developing countries. And Rene has over 30 years professional experience in industrial resource efficiency and cleaner production, productivity and innovation, social responsibility and circular economy, with extensive international experience in Europe, Asia, and Australia, covering a variety of manufacturing and related sectors, particularly from the perspective of SMEs, which is one of our main topics to discuss during the roundtable. He holds a PhD in environmental science from the University of Amsterdam. So without further ado, the screen is yours. Director Rene.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Sena, for introducing me and putting me on the spot as being an all-time friend, but with pleasure. It's also a pleasure to see Pakadi from Indonesia joining, where I also used to serve. So friends and colleagues, it's really indeed my pleasure to contribute today to the opening of this 15th APRSCP. I try in the meantime to also share my screen. Can you confirm that you can see it? Yes. Okay. So UNIDO indeed, as the UN Industrial Development Organization, supports the sustainable production, in particular into the SCP agenda, and we have been associated with the APRSCP for a long time. I think myself, I go back 22 years. I can say that, Anthony, in terms of affiliation with many of the members which are around there in different roles. I would like to speak in the next 7-8 minutes on green recovery and rejuvenation of manufacturing, and then putting the emphasis on industrial resource efficiency. So if we go back on what happened, and we did some stock takes about a year ago, but I sometimes feel that we go full circle and see the same situation unfortunately unraveling right now again in India and the Philippines and other places. So manufacturing came to a standstill and is recovering slowly, always bumps. And we see basically challenges in 5 areas that we see. There's this unprecedented uncertainty, what will happen in society and policy. There is an uncertainty in the market. So markets have plummeted. Orders were canceled at a value of billions of dollars. And this created a lot of uncertainty and loss of economic opportunity. And then we have seen the reverse migration, so that workers migrated, and that we also have new requirements on how we can work with people in the workplace to keep the hygiene measures. We've seen equipment and stocks standing idle and basically shut down in a rush, and then we started up in a rush and causing unfortunate accidents. And we've seen also disrupted supply chains, which already started before COVID hit really here. So in that sense, we can say that stimulus, which several of the earlier speakers have spoken about, can overcome the cash flow, which has been crunched by these factors, but it's insufficient to restart, recover, and revitalize the manufacturing sector. I will not go in all details, but what we've done then is to realize, and about 11 months ago, we launched this back to business portal, B3C MSME, building back business from crisis. And maybe maybe we should say building business forward. And we have provided a kind of a roadmap, which is there. So plan to recover, see what still makes sense, then ready the workplace. So make sure that it's safe to restart equipment and make sure you can meet the distance requirements and restart to recover. So put the jigsaw again, then look for new opportunities for growth and ultimately also buffer yourself in terms of business continuity. So this is online. This is, you see tutorials which are there. This was all done during lockdown. So it's a little bit simple maybe. And then we have a knowledge portal which explains what can be done in terms of guidance notes for MSMEs. And also we have then these checklists which give suggestions to businesses to restart better. Then we also say that crisis, of course, is also the flip side of it is opportunity. And we said that why don't we take these areas where we know that small and medium-sized enterprises are weak to take those up as opportunities for growth or rejuvenation. And we identified basically 7 areas: entrepreneurship, finances, customer relationships, supply chain, operations, manpower, and occupational health and safety. And those, we did similar kind of modules with web tutorials online and also resource materials. So in terms of, if we then look at operations, which is the closest, where we said we have to do manufacturing excellence with lean manufacturing, so that's effective. So you only manufacture what's needed by the customer, and you do it in a resource efficient way, so with the least possible inputs of materials, energy, and water. And you do then also look for maturity in terms of using digital technologies and move to Industry 4.0. So also here we have then guidance notes and we have some fact sheets. So I would really encourage the audience to go on this b3cmsme.org and take advantage of the materials which are there. I think that also, and this is maybe also a bit highlighted by earlier speakers already, we see that there will be a change towards a new normal, which nobody can really predict in full detail. But we see that the transformation of global production and consumption systems will have 3 different dimensions of change. So first will be one of resilience. So we saw the systems collapse because on one part of the value chain was disrupted and then moving on. So we will see a reshoring of and diversification of global value chains that's already happening. And we will probably also look at having more integration against between manufacturing and product development and research. So that will be value change, global value chains 2.0. Digitalized would be basically the transition that we saw. We saw a lot of e-commerce, and I would like to diversify that e-commerce from Industry 4.0, where we look at digital technologies to manufacture, and we have advanced digital manufacturing technologies. Where a lot of work is being done, which also stresses upon the need to have manufacturing excellence. And then, of course, we have the transition towards green or circular, the circular economy as a guiding paradigm arising. And I think from UNIDO's side, we emphasize that the circular economy should not be seen as an environmental concept, but it's ultimately an industrial economy or manufacturing economy that routes materials, parts, and products back into use several times and create more values in that with some of the new practices like remanufacturing, recycle, refuse, optimize, and so on. However, if we look at that, the circular economy, the clear point is that we cannot continue to live beyond the means provided. And colleagues from UNEP just already highlighted this, the interrelated planetary challenges that we face, or crises, if you wish, there. So we need to, and we can at the same time also not afford the economic opportunities which are arising out of resource efficiency. So we say then if we operationalize this, we see basically 3 main innovation strategies arising there. One is around circularity of resources. So that is the remanufacturing, recovery, revalorization of products. Then we see the point of efficiency. So if you have to close material cycles, it becomes much easier if we do this in a thinner cycle, so less materials per product. And we see the resource switch, so to use more natural resources, more renewable resources in enterprises. And of that, of course, then I point to industrial resource efficiency, which is basically the manufacturing agenda. So focusing on also then capturing and retaining economic value and of natural resources and nature at large. And then if we have resource efficiency, I come back to the work that UNIDO did and with UNEP and other partners on resource efficient and clean production. So we have to continue to drive for this resource efficiency, so doing more products with less energy, less materials and water. And if we do that, we have less stuff to throw away. So we have less waste, less wastewater, less emissions, and we improve the environment in which people operate and live. And that will help to self-nurture towards productivity and resource efficiency. So this is a self-nurturing cycle. And for that, we have then the established solutions, which are the practices which we've seen basically over the last 20 years has not changed a lot. We still need to push for good housekeeping. We still need to push for the right choices of raw materials, for monitoring that we know what we do, that we optimize, debottleneck, and look for new technologies and new product designs. So I would like to close perhaps here, maybe with a few points. I think that it's increasingly clear that green is the only appropriate color for recovery. I think that from a business perspective, in times of crisis, businesses, MSMEs can no longer afford to be wasteful with resources. So if you could be energy inefficient in the past, now you will be penalized that you can't compete. There is a new realization that cleaning up the air and environment is possible. Stefanos was referring to clean air. So there's a new young generation that has experienced that something better is possible, and that will be a momentum for change will come out of that. And also the realization is there, if the pandemic can create such an economic and social havoc, what could climate change then do? So this is just a warning sign for things which could be even worse in terms of overall impact. So the industrial resource efficiency is then clearly the starting point, and we have to broaden this perhaps a little bit broader to boost manufacturing excellence, to boost and also the preparedness for digital transformation and Industry 4.0. So there's many resource materials that UNIDO has proposed in the past, but I will not go into those details. Thank you very much, and success with this APRSCP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Rene. Definitely, you're pointing into something that is very relevant. During the entire pandemic, we really moved into a lot of activities, including this conference. And I'm happy to share with you that we are coming out with a a special issue of the Elsevier Journal for this APRCP webisodes. And the guest managing editor is also part of the panel later, Dr. Neil Lopez, and we will focus also on the digitalization, the physical internet, and the rebound effect, unsustainable consumption pattern brought with this the era, I would say. So may I now invite the EU Switch SCP facility advisor and also a board member of the APRCP, Ms. Lorraine Labaya, to please introduce our next speaker. Lorraine.
Thank you, Anthony. I am honored to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Arab Hobala, who is one of the champions on sustainable consumption and production, and he has been supporting the Asia-Pacific Roundtable for Sustainable Consumption and Production for many years. He is the team leader of the EU Switch Asia SCP facility since October 2017. And the Switch Asia has the aim to further induce and enable relevant stakeholders in Central, South, and Southeast Asian countries in developing and delivering policies and actions that support transformative change for SCP. Arab has served as UNEP Chief of Sustainable Consumption and Production from 2005 to 2016, with a particular focus on lifestyles, cities, and industry. Prior to that, he served in senior positions for 20 years in the UNEP Mediterranean Action Plan and in development. He has launched various global initiatives and partnerships related to building, cities, tourism, and food. Among his achievements, together with his teams, putting SCP at highest level in the UN and government strategies, establishment of the International Resource Panel, adoption of the 10-year framework and program for SDG 12, establishment of the Mediterranean Commission for Sustainable Development. He also holds a PhD in economic development and a master's in international trade. Dr. Arab Kubala, you have the floor.
Thank you. The screen is yours, Ara. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. So glad to see so many common faces. Regret not being close to each other to shake hands, but hopefully we'll be able to do it in maybe a year or so. I will not name anyone. I know you all, and now I miss you all. But let us move on that, and let me not to exceed too much my time. Let me share my screen. Do you have my screen?
No, we don't see it yet.
Oh. Go back again. What's wrong with it? Okay. It doesn't want to share it.
Aaron, I can do it for you, maybe. Yeah. I can share from my
end. Let me see if I can do it. It doesn't make sense. But if you can do it, do it. But I don't know, it's not coming up.
Okay, please have one more try again. Nope.
Oh, okay, I'm not getting it. Oh, can you put it?
Yes, I will put it up, and then what you do is just give me the signal, so I will move to the next slide. Now, just a moment. Now, can you see the screen now? Hello? Can you see the screen?
Yes, yes, we can see.
Okay, Arab, can you see the screen? Because I did not hear Arab. Arab? Mm-hmm. Sorry, did we, Arab, you're muted. So,
I'm fine. Can you put it for me? I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Sorry for that.
Okay, I will do it again. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Arab, can you?
Thank you very much, and sorry again. I mean, I tested it several times, but find some problems. Okay, what I want to share with you, and you will not hear from me more than now the word green recovery, because I think we are now excessively using and abusing of it as when we have new terms. And we are reshifting programs under this title without simply missing the basics. And I want to go back to the basics of why we have not implemented SCP so far, because we have not implemented at scale as we should. And what are the main elements that are absolutely necessary that we should still care about if we want to go on green recovery, green economy, SCP, and so on. Can you go on next, please? Okay, we all know SCP has now been longly discussed for more than 30 years, properly understood. Research has been done there. For everyone, do more with less is so simple, well known. We have so many policies and tools that have been, action plans that have been prepared, There are multiple of good initiatives everywhere. These are facts. The problem is that we have very slow implementation, very low implementation, limited changes, and limited transformation since 30 years. The health problem today have just reminded us how inefficient and careless we are, destroying consciously the roots of our living. And I think this is the only lesson I will take from COVID today. Next, please. Our lifestyles remain unsustainable. And in Asia, the big problem is that the needs are increasing exponentially. The demands, mainly by the middle class that is growing in a frightening manner, are just overriding any progress related to sustainability. We have heard from the various presenters before, from Indonesia, from Philippines, the very good initiatives and policies we have. But if we compare them to the demand from the population and mainly the growing middle class, unfortunately, they become a drop in the ocean that are not changing the color of the water or anything, because the trend remains unsustainable, because we keep on destroying and we want to consume more. And I don't see how we can put a brake on this middle class growing and increasing demand. And that's the main concern for me, because good examples, we have them everywhere. I live in Bangkok and I see fantastic examples, but we are not scaling them up. We are not multiplying them, and they're not making a difference. And you can say the same in each and every country in Asia. In terms of demand, when we buy the products, except the few convinced persons, no one worry about where my product is coming from, how it has been manufactured, what will happen with my product afterwards. And we're not communicating properly enough about that. We tend to forget the context in each country, bring lessons from outside, try to implement them. Understanding the context matters a lot if we want to make a difference there. And when we are promoting sustainable consumption production or now green recovery, if we don't link it to a business case, it will not go long. So, and this can be done through resource efficiency rather easily. And we are so convinced, we the preach person, the convinced, that we miss the point by convincing the others about that. When we bring the business sector and even the consumer, promoting innovation in order to move more toward efficiency. And as we have been doing on the environment before, we learned a little bit now on the social issue. And when we come to the pandemic now, we should avoid accusing some person in order to find a way to hide the problems and not to move further. We need absolutely to create the trust to move on. Can we get next, please? So what is still missing for me, and I have been repeating this for almost 30 years, is the system understanding. Even if you look at the pandemic now, it's because we missed the system understanding, the interrelation that we get there. Unfortunately, even on the Sustainable Development Goal, that when they were prepared with the understanding of a system approach. Now that we are implementing them, we are going back to the silo approach, and we're taking care of one SDGs and leaving the others, don't taking into account the whole picture of the SDGs. The 17 are all interrelated in a system approach. And when we start implementing it, even certain UN agencies, better informed than others, take one SDG, focus on it, and don't link enough with the others. And this is the big problem that we have when we'll be tracing the value chain. not disconnecting it, not desiccating it, but really making sure that the interrelation is there. This makes our work complicated. This work of the policymaker complicated, but that's the way we have to move on. And for that, a way is to see how we can really associate the concerned stakeholders and create dialogue. I have been among others, working with ministries, designing policies and so on, action plan, but we did not empower them to implement it. And once this moves on, we have the document on a shelf and it's not implemented afterward. So a policy framework without the right tools for implementation from a personal perspective and the technical tools will lead nowhere. One important issue that I have seen nowadays, and even with the COVID, unfortunately, we keep on distinguishing between individuals and the system. The system does not exist without the individuals, and the individuals compose the system. So if we don't see them as one when we're looking for solution, we will have a problem there. Can I get next, please? And that's the problem, is the visible part of the iceberg. Everything we are doing, what we are preaching, what we are working on is just the visible part of the iceberg. We don't look enough in detail, deep enough on the supply chain, on our real behavior, the story of the behavior, the culture that is behind it, why we are doing it. We remain at the shelf and try to make a change there. And by just limiting ourselves to that, we don't get to the scale we're expecting. And that's why all of us, including the Asia Pacific Roundtable and other roundtables, we have been discussing so much about SCP without really inducing the transformative approach we want, because we don't think enough out of the box, and we don't go deeper into the box because it simply requires more time, more complication, and so on. So the invisible part of the iceberg, if we don't care about it, we will not go to SCP, we will not go to green recovery. Next, please. So innovation is absolutely fundamental, and innovation is not just high tech. Innovation is not with the big companies. Innovation is at the very small level, and probably this is the best one. The one at the small level takes root and it can be scaled up and move on. And that's why we need to focus more and more on the small and medium enterprises, micro, and the startup. What I have seen also is missing, and it keep on missing, is how to integrate the notion of transition in our actions. Any transformative change, working on green recovery, working on green economy, working on SCP needs time. It cannot happen overnight. And usually we're not integrating it. It takes 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. How are we putting this into the plan? What are the resources for each one of the phases? How are we coming back again? The beauty, and I will say danger of SCP, that it's a movement, it's evolving. You don't get a status of SCP. The next day it changed. So you need to keep yourself updated and move ahead on that. And that's what we are missing compared to other policies. And it's alive. So working on that properly, integrating the transition notion will be extremely important for us to reach our goal. Next, please. How we have been trying to reply to that under the EU SCP switches facility. From the beginning, we said we need to break the silos. We have different components working together in parallel, pretending to work together closely. We have tried with a lot of patience, perseverance to create consultation, to bring the people around the table, to have them talk together, whatever their level are, in order to create this trust within the program and within the countries. Have we succeeded entirely? No, certainly not. But we have initiated a process that could eventually lead to some successful examples. we have been insisting a lot on how to accompany the partner in communicating properly, the right message to the right target, and focus first on what is obvious and what you can deliver. It's so complicated in the system, still putting it in the system. Take a parcel of it, focus on it, but don't forget the system out of that. And this will create the trust for people telling, okay, we know where they are, we can accompany with them. But communication and branding in all this is extremely important. And many of you probably know my sticks, carrots, and tambourine and drums. We need absolutely to keep the tambourine and drums even more than the sticks and the carrots. Next, please. Now, this is the slide that I had prepared one day for plastics, but I realized that in fact, it is much more universal. In the policy that we are preparing, if we don't put the right means for implementation, they become useless. They become just a document. And 99% of the policies we have around the world are just policies, not implementable. And the action plan, that if they are not well communicated, we will find constraints because people do not understand exactly where we want to go and how we want to implement it. And I use these three terms, the bad, the ugly, and the good, that can be translated in any sector. We have in any sector something that is bad. What is bad? Let us find a way to get rid of it. Something that is ugly does not mean that it is bad. And we have it in the consumption patterns. We have in what you consume. You have some ugly things, but can be excellent if we just see how to work out around them. And the good one that need to be preserved properly. But for this, you need a proper education and the right information to different people. Next, Anthony. And I will be very soon to end. Now, to shift to SCP, this is some way of summarizing what I have said. Change will not occur by force. You don't change by law. It's impossible. You convince people, you trust people, you put them on board, you work with them. And this is the same for the pandemic today. There is no need to force them, educate them, convince them, and move ahead slowly and slowly. So you need to get to be rational in the way you put the things in order to change the mindset. And this cannot be done individually. Collective change is an absolute necessity if we want to get to the right transformative change. Again, the system, not the individuals, or the individuals of the system together, so that we can get to what I call a deep structural change, not the shallow one, not the cosmetic one. And today, it is 99% cosmetic change. Even us, even me, I can tell you, I'm very far from my SCP concept I'm preaching for. So we have to be extremely careful in enabling properly the people before we get to the right impact. Next one, I think it's just the announcement of the next webisode 2 that we will be organizing, where you will have more information on the same issue. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the technical issue.
Okay, thank you very much, Arab. Now I would like to invite Dr. Rat, our former Vice President of APRSCP and currently the President of the APRSCP Foundation, to introduce our last speaker for the presentation 5 before we will move into the roundtable discussion. Dr. Rat.
Thanks, Anthony. It is my privilege to introduce our next distinguished speaker from GIZ, a good friend of APRSCP. Mr. Guy Hoffman is an experienced circular economy project manager and has worked and lived in over 10 countries on the topics such as urban and heritage management, waste management, and energy efficiency. In Thailand, he now is a director of a portfolio of sustainable consumption and production projects in 9 countries in Southeast Asia, with focus on sustainable public procurement, eco-label, and single-use plastic prevention. Mr. Guy Hoffman, the floor is yours.
Are you playing the? Hi, my name is Kai Hoffman. Are you playing the video?
Okay, would you like me to play the video?
I think that is preferable, yes.
Okay, so give me 1 second. Okay, so let me do it. Share. So,
Good morning to Europe and good afternoon to Southeast Asia. My name is Kai Hofmann. I'm the head of sustainable consumption and production of the GIZ portfolio in Thailand. My intention today is to provide you a quick preview on the contribution of GIZ to the APRSCP on the 4th of May. And here I would like to start to share my screen. The 15th APRSCP is on green recovery and beyond in the Asian Pacific through sustainable consumption and production. In GIZ, we are running 2 projects currently, which is sustainable consumption and production outreach in Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Bhutan, as well as CAPC, a project on single-use plastic prevention in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. Episode 3 will be that GIZ has prepared will be on policy instruments for upstream circular economy. And it will run on Tuesday, the 4th of May, India time 10:30, Bangkok time 1 o'clock, Manila 2 o'clock, and Japan at 3 o'clock. I'm really looking forward to meet all of you there. Why did we choose policy instruments for upstream circular economy? The problem in the current policy field is that most of the time circular economy is seen as the same thing as recycling, which is not at all true. We have to see at the waste hierarchy, and we have to start from the top of the waste hierarchy, which is on prevention. And this is prior to consumption. It means that is how the product is designed, how the product is developed from the beginning, so it is more sustainable. Why do we do this? Simply because it has the biggest impact. I provide you this example here of a so-called wedge diagram. A wedge diagram is a diagram from now onwards for the next 2 decades on, in this case, plastic or single-use plastic. And the scenario is showing that if we continue as business as usual, we will almost double our plastic consumption by 2040. And if we don't want this, if we don't want our oceans to be more littered and more polluted, our landfills more burning, we will have to make a strong case for providing the incentives that are possible to do. So what I want to show with this diagram is that roughly 50% of the entire possible reduction potential lies within reduction and substitution of the plastic product. So this is in the hierarchy, in the waste hierarchy, the top layer, the prevention aspect, and the prepare for reuse aspect. Whereas recycling, and you can see this here in the green button, makes only up 20% of the potential until 2004. In the episode 3, we would like to introduce you to this concept of upstream policy instruments. And we will, the objectives are to create a common understanding of circular economy with the focus on upstream. And we will focus or deep dive into sustainable public procurement and eco-label as two policy instruments, powerful policy instruments within upstream circular economy. In SPP, or Sustainable Public Procurement, we will focus on the fundamentals and the policies that are required as preconditions. We will provide you experiences and best practices from advanced countries. However, we'll also introduce you to barriers and that are hindering the PPP implementation and initiatives in the region to promote and implement PPP. Second, we will go into eco-labels and standards. Again, we will introduce the concept of eco-labels and how eco-labels and standards promote circular economy. We will also have a deep dive in how to link circularity to the willingness to pay and provide you again barriers on eco-label implementation and initiatives to support you in implementing eco-labels. Sustainable public procurement eco-labels are policy instruments and they are cross-cutting, across branches. However, we would like to deep dive into one specific branch to illustrate, to provide a good example on how SPP and eco-labels can actually support upstream circular economy. We chose the plastic industry. The upstream single-use plastic prevention policies in the European Union and Germany will provide an overview on how we do that in Europe. We will see how we can adopt these tools to Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia, and provide you also a deep dive in innovation ecosystem building for circular economy, especially for plastic circular economy, and how to bridge the problem of private sector ecosystem financing to get this done. I'm very proud that Dr. Julf Jeckel, the head of division of the Federal Ministry of Environment, Natural Conservation and Nuclear Safety, the BMU, will welcome us to the webisode 3. Dr. Tumnungrut will, the APRSCP board member and founding president, will provide the opening remarks, and I myself will provide a keynote. Dr. Shayot will moderate the session, and Dr. Sena Peires from the Philippines as well. We will get inputs on green public procurement and eco-label from Mr. Sidat and also from Chin Huan Tien, the Chief Technical Officer. We will have Kun Wilesane Punchanai to moderate together with Mr. Kumar. On the plastic aspect, we're going to have Dr. Vijan and Mr. Simon Baldwin to provide us insights on the work they are doing on private sector and innovation management. On the following discussion and roundtable, we will be joined by Mr. Shadha and Mr. Sharion Silip, who is the chairperson of Ertan Group. I'm very much looking forward to meeting you all and hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kai, for your presentation. Since we have we experienced that in this kind of virtual meeting, we cannot take a too long meeting. So we intentionally make this meeting only 2.5 hours. And therefore, we will have a short roundtable discussion by inviting our 7 esteemed panelists, just to give one or maximum maybe a second round if we have time of comments. And without going further into the introduction, I would like to share with you the screen that we have prepared only 4 simple questions. like number one, priority sectors for post-pandemic recovery and opportunities for SCP, such as the I coined it myself 10YFP2. As we know, we are already moving. We are almost ending with the 10-year framework. Its first stage or first phase, the climate change or health issue. The second guide is on short to medium term goals and actions to support green recovery, such as the sustainable public procurement and eco-label tools, supporting green recovery of the micro, small, and medium enterprises. And number four, adapting and adopting SCP in this new normal age of digital reliance, such as issues such as the e-waste, the fourth industrial revolution, technology, lifestyle, and etc. So I understand also that my colleague Kojima-san has also a important meeting to attend. So may I invite first I would be inviting each panel discussant to spend not maximum 1 or 2 minutes, just a short idea and intervention, so that we may be able to have a second round quickly. So Mr. Kojima-san, would you like to comment especially on the digital reliance, because you have been an expert in this area? Thank you.
Thank you very much for kind introduction. I think the COVID-19 is a major accelerator of digital technology. Office workers started remote working from home. Every day, many webinars and virtual meetings have been organized, like this meeting. And many lectures in university are also provided through the internet. In the post-COVID-19 era, kind of one of the new normal is such kind of working from home, I think. And maybe real meeting and real lecture will come back again somehow, but I feel we will not go back completely. So we will work from home. We will have a webinar and online lectures. Yeah, probably. But we should think about how to adopt such new working style along with sustainable consumption and production. For example, some work from home may not have some home may not have energy efficient air conditioner or may not have enough insulation in the home. So they may consume more energy in the home. So that will be a kind of a challenge, I think. So, but we may be able to reduce the investment in infrastructure for commuting somehow, and we can reduce the energy consumption in the commuting. So I think we need to put more investment to improve energy efficiency at home. Then we can utilize the reduced impact. We can reduce the impact of the work from home, I think. I found such pathway or the possibilities in the dialogue between Thai and Japanese experts organized in Peak of Asia project. So which the project will organize the webinar for under this APRSCP. So we hope you will attend the episode 4 also. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kojima-san. And of course, when Kojima-san was working on these e-waste issues over the entire Asia-Pacific region, and many of these e-waste really go down the pollution hierarchy into many developing countries, it also affects many small and medium enterprises. During this pandemic, and what do you see the visionary after the pandemic will end? maybe may I invite our board member, Ms. Kun Sang from Bhutan, to comment on that?
Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Anthony. Excellencies, distinguished speakers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kunzang, and it's really nice to see everybody, meet you all virtually. And here I'm working with the National Environment Commission and also the SCP focal point here. So as we speak right now, we are also, as our colleague from GIZ was mentioning, this SCP outreach project here, which is being coordinated by Economic Affairs Ministry. So we are also parallelly having this meeting. So it's really the SCP GPP happening right now. So I'm really glad everything is it's taking good shape. So on the SME role, especially in the green economy, as Dr. Anthony and also previous speakers are mentioning, the role of SMEs are very critical, especially in the when the countries around the world are reeling with impact of this pandemic. It's very evidently showcased. And studies also show their contribution, when it comes to the contribution to GDP, which is the gross domestic product, and also the employment. So coming to Bhutan's context, the idea of green economy fits in very well within the framework of gross national happiness development policy. And also Bhutan's economic development policy embraces the green economic concept and principle. The country has several advantages when it comes to the pursuit of green economy. It includes our constitutional mandate to maintain 60% of land under the forest cover, and also the limited number of polluting industries and positive state of natural environment, political stability, and so on and so forth. And also, since we are a young democracy, it's opening up to new socio-economic development opportunities. So the contribution, the support from Bhutan's government to the SMEs dates back to more than 2 decades now. So the contribution from government is increasingly significant, and also the contribution from SMEs themselves are very evident. The major avenues for green economy in Bhutan are especially through development of clean energy by harnessing hydropower and renewable energy sources, and also agriculture, forest, biodiversity, and the sustainable high value and low impact, the tourism, transportation industries, and so on and so forth. So here we are already asking ourselves this question, how can we effectively coordinate when it comes to construction, transport, agriculture, waste, industry sector, to help ourselves advance when it comes to sustainable green economy, and how to strengthen the involvement of our SMEs as we go along, and how to leverage green finance and investment, and how can the country rebuild in a way that aligns with the objective of Paris Agreement and SDGs goals. So some of the example of SMEs that I can give from Bhutan, which is relevant to our discussion, is firstly, leadership is very important. So the government has initiated this startup center, which was established in 2018 with the space for 28 startup SMEs. And this center is for cottage and small industry entrepreneurs, where new and innovative business ideas shall be nurtured. And also it enables the potential SMEs to grow their business through shared space and other support programs, such as not limited to mentoring, training, marketing. So as our previous speaker, mentioned, it's so much about coordination and how to take things forward, not working in silo. We really have to break that silo. So then resource pooling happens, best practices sharing and everything. So we have to work in a coordination. So this is how we have done. And when it comes to second example is a very impressive one. It's done by a registered SCP, which is called Greener Way. So the Greener Way has got into business, of Ecopol, which is first of its kind, especially when it comes to recycling, waste recycling, plastic waste recycling in Bhutan. And rural part of Bhutan, interestingly, is promoting this, poles by using as electric fencing to avoid human-wildlife conflicts. And we are able to replace this wooden poles by this eco poles. So you can only imagine the impact of the environmental benefits, how it contributes towards forest conservation. It's very impressive and significant. Depending on the shape and size of the pole, 3 to 12 kg of plastic waste are used in producing a single pole. So again, here, one can imagine the amount of plastic waste that's reduced, that's going into the landfill. And similar impressive innovation is on the Green Road, which started in...
By the way, Kun Sang, if you don't mind, I will invite you to share the other examples later. May I move on to another panel?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah,
thank you very much. I think the second example is excellent. But prior to the concern on the plastic issue and also the e-waste issue, we have a long time dealing with the greenhouse gas. And we invited the lead author of the APRSCP on industry and greenhouse gas, Professor Geng Yong, formerly with the Chinese Academy of Science and now the Dean of the Jiao Tong University in Shanghai. Professor Geng, can you share 1 or 2 minutes on your experience and what are the take-home message? Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Brother Rene and Dr. Hota-san, you are all my long-term friends. So it's very nice to join this discussion. Actually, this week, I'm also attending the ELAM4, the fourth lead author meeting of IPCC for the AR6. So we are discussing a lot of issues, but due to the time zone problems, I have to attend those meetings mainly in our late evening. But it's okay. So last night I attended the discussion until 2 a.m. this morning. So I'm a little bit sleepy. But anyway, I want to share some of my ideas. You all know that the Chinese government has set up a target to achieve carbon neutrality until year 2060, and then to peak its overall greenhouse gas emission in year 2030. So it's a very great target, which means from both production and consumption point of view, we need to initiate systematic reform. All the citizens have to change their consumption behavior toward low carbon consumption. All the enterprises also need to initiate low carbon production. So recently we have a lot of discussion domestically because a lot of people don't believe that it's easier to achieve carbon neutrality. But I think it's a right topic because China is the largest country in terms of CO2 emissions, and China should take the responsibility to be a global leader in this regard. And in that regard, I think technology could be a key issue. So if we have more innovative technologies, we can try to improve the overall energy efficiency from all the sectors. But at the same time, we also need to initiate capacity building activities to educate the general public so that they can understand how they can change their behaviors. Otherwise, we just talk about the great targets and it never be achieved. So in order to save time, I just stop here. Anthony?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Thank you, Professor Geng. Yes, thank you. For the next question, I would like to throw it to our colleague who is an expert not only in the specific theme but for entire Asia Pacific region, because they have been doing several 3-hour forums and also transportation issues in our region for a long time. And Anupam, may I invite you to share some of your messages?
Sure. Thank you very much, Anthony, for giving me this opportunity. And thank you very much, everyone, so for giving me this opportunity to speak. So actually, first I will talk about the topic of post-COVID recovery point on SCP. I think we should think about how Dr. Rene mentioned about how SMEs are working to recover their pathway. So in that case, I think we should maximize the value and extending the lifeline product, which we can use by the remanufacturing or repair or reuse. In that way, we can reduce the amount of material and waste and cut the industrial waste as well, around 80 to 90%, and also cut the emission of GHG and about 90%. So that is the one way we can do. It's called circular economy, because COVID-19 is taught us like two possibilities. The first thing they taught us about the adaptability. We can adapt because we are saying the new normal, because we know it's not possible to go back to the past normal. So the new normal is two things. We think about adaptability, and the second is about the resilience. So in resilience part, I think we should think about the new innovative way to cover up this, overcome from this pandemic. Like SMEs, like now the business owners have to be more innovative to create the product which is really needed at this stage, so that they can flow their cash or they can flow their liquidity. So in that case, I think the three pillars we should not forget about, like economic pillar, social, and environment. So in these three pillars is including the digital technologies. So I think the circular economy is the one major part which should involve all SDGs. Like Dr. Arab said, that all SDGs are linked. That's true, all SDGs are linked. So if we talk about circular economy is not the solution only SDG 12. It is starting from SDG 1 and poverty, and SDG 6 and 14. So in that way, we can overcome this possible way is from the we are creating now the problem we are facing. So I think that is one possible way we can find out the solution by adopting the circular economy, which we cannot produce any waste, and we use the product which is available now with the raw material. So because during the pandemic time, everything is locked down, so we have more local ingredients, local products. So that we should think about that part also in SME sectors, I think.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anupam. We now have a message from our president, Mr. Adi, at the very beginning, that we would like further accelerate the policy and the science interface. And this is, I think, the right timing for Asia. We are quite mature now. We have a very good scientific pool now at this moment. So the Future Earth has created a CAN group on system of SCP. And my colleague, an Indonesian colleague who is now based in Germany, I would like to invite her to share some of the thoughts on how we can do that better. Kartika?
Yes, thank you, Anthony. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Anthony, for having me today. I think we have covered a lot of ground, so I try not to repeat things here. But basically, I would like to highlight the fact that SMEs are the largest source of employment and delivery of goods and services, particularly in developing economies like in Asia and the Pacific. Therefore, disruptions to SMEs have major social and welfare implications for the poor and rural populations. Permanent closures of small enterprises, as we have been discussing since morning or afternoon in Asia, have resulted in a loss of intangible capital, skills, and innovation capacity. All this will risk locking countries in Asia and Pacific into deep recessions, according to the World Bank, even long after the pandemic itself. Therefore, I agree with you, Anthony, that policies oriented towards supporting SMEs need to be pursued in the short, medium, and long term. And from our work, as you mentioned earlier, together with the Future Earth in the Knowledge and Action Network on systems of SCP, as well as at the Collaborating Center on Sustainable Consumption and Production in Germany. From our work directly with SMEs on the ground, we learned that governments need to create an enabling environment to support SMEs to thrive again. This at least requires three aspects. First is the new partnerships between SMEs and think tanks or universities and research institutes to build the capacity of SMEs so they can devise their own green recovery strategies, since every business is unique and have their own set of challenges and, of course, local context. By forging new partnerships and collaborations, SMEs will have access to new methodologies such as design thinking, circular business models, and so on and so forth, which have been mentioned earlier by the previous speakers, but also new or digital technologies, which includes harnessing the big data. From our projects that work with SMEs on the ground, we saw how SMEs are right now anxious to reinvent their business, and they often don't know how to do it in real life. And the second thing is that policymakers can support SMEs to be more sustainable and resilient towards future global shocks by helping SMEs access the finance, or green finance in this case, because through this current pandemic, consumers see how protecting the environment equals to their well-being. Therefore, SMEs need some support in accessing finance to start investing in green measures, such as renewable energy, environmental management, circular economy approaches, and waste management, to say the least. And my final point is that as global market is contracting due to lower demand for non-essential products, such as clothing and tourism, SMEs will need support in re-establishing their position in the value chains, especially when they are serving international markets. Thank you, Anthony. Over to you.
Yes, I agree. I haven't been buying clothes and travel all this time. The last but not the least in our panel is representing the youth. I invited Dr. Neil Lopez, who co-authored the GEO6 youth version, to share with us, especially how the youth look at this digital age. Neil, the screen is yours. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Professor Anthony. So I think with the type of technology we have now in our hands, the type of digital technologies, I think the role of the youth today will be towards the mainstreaming of SCP, sustainable consumption and production. I think one of the things digital technology does best is it speeds up data collection, distribution, and analysis. So in fact, digital technologies have shown promise in improving services. So for example, in logistics and transport, we now have on-demand transport services. We also have optimization of routes. And also smart devices have become very affordable, even for household users. So for example, at home, I have a smart meter. I used to measure the energy consumption of my air conditioning unit, and I was able to buy it just for $20. And then I have another Wi-Fi device. I used to control other appliances, which I was able to buy for like $6. So I think one of the roles digital technologies will play in SCP will be to improve the efficiency of decision making. In addition to industrial efficiency at the government level, industrial level, business level, and even at the household level. So as they say, you cannot control what you cannot measure. And as our previous speakers mentioned, green recovery should be based on well-collected and analyzed data, and that we have to be fast in responding to the problems. No? So to end, I believe increased decision-making efficiency through the use of digital technologies can accelerate the mainstreaming of sustainable consumption and production.
Thank you. Dr. Neil is young and energetic, so actually we requested him already to serve as the guest managing editor for the special issue of the journal for this entire webisode event. Before I invite our Vice President to give the closing remarks, may I just invite all the speakers, if you have any further comment and question, please do share them through our email, and then we will post your messages and ideas in our in our Facebook page, so that we will be able to abide as much as possible within this 2.5 hour long session. And of course, I want to announce also that in our Facebook page, which is APRCP, we already posted the call for nomination. So now we have some seats for the board of APRCP open to public for nomination, of course, subject to the eligibility and qualification screened by a committee. Finally, I want to thank my local organizing team for supporting all of us here, that we have been worrying about the Wi-Fi capability and capacity in the developing countries, but I think so far we have been smooth in doing that. Also, questions from the audience in the YouTube, please also leave your message or send it by email, which was already indicated. Finally, may I invite the Vice President of the APRCP, former Vice Minister of Environment of Cambodia, Dr. Chunvanak, to give the closing remarks. Dr. Chunvanak.
Thank you very much indeed. First, I would like to, on behalf of the APRSCP, would like to express my deepest thanks to the government of the Philippines and hosting the organizing committee, Dr. Anthony Chief, and also to the Minister of Science and Technology and the Vice Minister of Environment of the Philippines. And my best appreciation also go for the Mr. President Adi, Excellency Laxmi, and the partners, Dr. Dichens and Dr. Stefano, and all my colleagues that I have known so far. And just the tip of the, I would like to be short, not be long. Tip of the iceberg is, I would call it the tip of a resilient green iceberg. From Cambodia parts, we have the green growth policy and strategic national strategic plan adopted since 2013, when I was the Secretary General of the Council, Green Growth Council. And this is the Cambodia Green Growth Model is inclusive in the work towards the harmonization, as we talk about now the green recovery. And from the APRSCP, we have the 12 APRSCP acting together for our future green sustainability in the Asia Pacific region. We have the UNCLOS declaration on that greening activity, call for the world green civilization. And from the APRSCP itself, we are coherent and consistent from one theme to another. We don't go away from being green. This is one of the tip of the green iceberg on the planet Earth. And I would not repeat, a lot of the speaker and panelists mentioned a lot about the impacts of the COVID-19. And actually the COVID-19 impacts do make ourselves think differently out of the box. And we reinforce the SCP implementation instead, because we don't have any option and choice to go around and to waste time. And everyone base ourselves the decision on the use of the social media and the technology for conducting the virtual meetings and virtual conferencings. This is, we could save time and space, and as well as the resources that we used to before. We have the conventional meetings in the different formats and different regions, even at the international level in the UN. We would waste a lot, and this is more of the talk rather than walk the talk, as one of the speaker mentions. So it is the right chance for the Asia Pacific regions to empower the APRSCP. Now, as APRSCP is the first time in history do the greening process by having the series of conference in the episodes from 1 to 4. And my last comments is I would have the 3 points to highlight for the ending of this episode 1. First, we should think green, love green X, and the harmonization with nature. Go green. And the last one is that green civilization as a new transformative system of change approach. Like that way, our green mentality would start, and we have the right start already, because we have the right behavioral change by adopting the technology as a mask for our survival. And I thank you very much indeed. I would like to conclude the closing of this episode 1, and all participants and speakers would join the episode 2, 3, and 4 according to schedule. I thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, and goodbye to everyone. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you, everyone.
See you.
Bye-bye.